Hello, we're back to the topic of the sovereign citizen, and this is the judicial view from Judge Knott, a former Superior Court judge, part-time. And the topic we were on in the last episode, we didn't finish, but it really is the key. So we're going to go back to it. It is the topic dealing with what is the fallacy that runs through the stop. In other words, when the officers are when this case is starting out, or any case, and the officers have pulled the person over, what is the completely false, incorrect, ludicrous belief in their system that makes everything that follows it, every last thing that the sovereign citizen does, is not supported by law. And in some matters, I could see if you had a really tight officer, you could pile up 10 or 20 or 30 infractions or even misdemeanors out of what the driver does. And by that, I mean what the driver does, leaning or relying on their belief that there is a difference between traveling and driving. And you can see where we're going. So, as you know, all of these cases are dependent upon the philosophy, belief that there is a difference between traveling and driving. And that since traveling is a right established in the Constitution, they are convinced that that means that driving is a right that can't be licensed, and they show that there's all sorts of laws saying that an actual right cannot be licensed or controlled by the state. But the clear falsity is in two massive mistakes. First, driving is just one method of traveling. Not all methods of traveling are permissible, because if that weren't the case, if that were the case, you could say, I needed to go visit my sister in Miami, and so I went to the local airport and found a plane that I could start, and I knew how to fly it from having played video games at home. And so I stole an airplane from the airport. And I did that because I had to travel to Miami, and therefore my actions, you can't arrest me for. It's not criminal, even though I took somebody else's property and et cetera, and endangered probably thousands of people as it went over each succeeding piece of land. You would still have a person who would wrongfully be saying, oh, no, I was traveling. I wasn't flying. No, flying an airplane? Sure, you need a license to fly an airplane, a pilot's license. But no, I was not flying. I was traveling. No, you're not. When you're in your car, you're driving. And the other huge, extremely stupid mistake is the argument that a person is not licensable. In other words, the state doesn't have a ability to take over their usage of a vehicle unless they're doing it for commercial purposes. And as we said in the last episode, we touched on it, but that is clearly wrong. And the worst part is, that's why you never take advice from someone who is not an attorney. The worst part is they base that on Black's Dictionary of Law, and anybody knows that is not a prime authority for law. Legal books, in other words, cases, and especially cases from the Supreme Court, those are the real laws, and the laws written out in the codes, where the code says this is legal and this is not. Black's Law is just an assistance or an aid to lawyers that someone has come up with to make some money, but it is not a prime source of law. It's something that you can cite surely to the court when you're trying to make your argument, but no, it is persuasive authority, which means a court is not bound in any way to follow it. A court can just as easily ignore it. It's not binding authority, such as a case from the Supreme Court, unfortunately, is. So the point is that any person, and it really doesn't matter whether they claim themselves to be a sovereign citizen or not a sovereign citizen, any person who claims that they don't need a license because they're traveling is wrong. That's clearly wrong. And the weird part, and I think this is really the strangest part, and it makes me very suspicious of every person who utters that, is that they claim that Black's Law says X, Y, or Z. Well, Black's Law is not an expensive book. I've bought used but current copies of it for under $10. Why do none of these people ever have a copy of Black's Law? Why do they never know what Black's Law says? You ask them, what does Black's Law say? And they give you their interpretation of it, which always happens to work out, of course, in their favor. But you never see them actually, well, I have Black's Law Dictionary right here on the car seat, and I'm going to read it to you. And the reason is that if you do that, or if they did that, any person would see that Black's Law clearly says that driving is where you use or employ a vehicle to travel. That's it. And employ does not in any way refer to employment, commerce, or anything like that. Whoever thought that, I think, had to be intentionally trying to make a fallacious argument. But the truth of the matter is that there is no such argument made by blacks. Blacks clearly lays it out that the driving means that you are using or employing a vehicle to go somewhere. That's all that driving is. And so if you're pulled over and you're a sovereign citizen and you try to say, well, no, I'm not driving, I'm traveling, you're 100% wrong. You couldn't be more wrong. And you're damn close to where I think a court could take notice of the fact that it's been proven wrong. Now, here's the thing that really you want to keep, if you were a sovereign citizen, or if you're someone who's been taken in by the sovereign citizens, you want to be very, very careful of this danger to you. Suppose your hearing is coming up on the 1st of the next month, and so you wisely, and in contradiction of the instructions that come in your sovereign citizens book, you file a written brief asking the court to dismiss your case, and you cite Black's Law. Well, if you cite Black's Law definition of driving, you have now just given the court the proof that your case has no merit. Your case is completely wrong. Because if you include in there Black's definition of what driving is, then you see it has nothing to do with employment, commerce, etc., and some of the funnier ones, or maritime law, which, by the way, has to do with boats and shipping and commerce upon the open seas. So when you come up there and say, is this a maritime case? You just expose yourself as a fool and basically a phony. Or if you don't know that your criminal case is a criminal case, you're supposed to know that without having to ask the judge. And you're also supposed to know that the judge is not your lawyer. You cannot walk into a court and say, hey, I want these questions answered. Is this a criminal? You can't do that. It's not your right to do so. And the poor people taken in by the sovereign citizen movement who say, well, it says right here, I have a right to know this and I have a right to know that. The fact that you have a right to know something doesn't mean you have a right to interrupt the workings of the court and demand that somebody give you that information, the person that you think owes it to you. The judge isn't the person that owes you that information. If you want answers to that information, go to a lawyer. Hire a lawyer. And if you say, well, I don't have the money to hire one, then I'd say, well, then probably your theory about how you're going to get rich is not working out well for you, and you might want to just change to a more normal, I'm just going to work like everybody else. But the point is that if you're looking where you can get your questions answered, you can employ a lawyer. Now, that's the correct word of employ, the correct usage. Or, like the court said, they'll appoint you one. But that's a double-edged sword, as are, I think, all swords. But the point is still, if you have a lawyer who informs you that your theory is wrong, that no, driving a vehicle is not a form that's, you don't need to be licensed. You do need to be licensed for that. That yes, it is traveling, and yes, it is driving at the same time. Well, now you've walked into court knowing that your case has no merit. And depending on how hard you push that case ahead, you could be sanctioned by the judge, because it's sanctionable. You can go to jail, you can get fined for pushing ahead a case that you know has no merit. And now for some of you, you're going to get a brief, very brief word from someone who helps pay for the show. And then we'll be back in about 2 minutes. All right, we are back. This is Judge Not, Lest Ye Be Judged. That's actually Judge Less Not is my fictional name. Let's get back down to another area that's extremely common and annoying in stops of sovereign citizens, and that is their efforts, and I believe it's a strategy to disrupt the officer, and that is the stall. What is a stall? Well, it's where you put your horse. We all have a horse. But the thing is that they've been taught that when the officer asks them, which the officer is legally entitled to do, it's in the vehicle code of your state, when the judge asks you for your driver's license, and in most cases your insurance and registration, there is absolutely no right to delay the officer. And it doesn't matter if you state your reason for doing so as really heartfelt, I don't really believe in this thing. It doesn't matter what reason you give the officer. Giving the officer a reason is violating the law. Because as you don't give the officer the license, you're violating the law. There is no explanation. There's nothing in that package of papers that you paid for when you signed up as a less than sovereign citizen. There's no legal grounds not to accommodate or conform with the officer's order. It's an order, and anything you do to not comply with it is grounds. Well, he doesn't even have to tell you that. So when they give you a little extra time because you seem to have the speech down where you say, can I help you with something? Do you need some help? Not only is that not in any way an excuse to where you are not entitled to refuse to give your license, it's just comically stupid. You know, the officer knows that they don't ever need your help with anything. So for you to imply that you're there ready to help them, it will not fool any judge. Let me tell you, having been one for about 10 years, pro tem, there is absolutely no judge that will ever be fooled by your pronouncing that you're there to help the cops, that will say in that case you are not violating the law. Now, you're violating the law the minute he asks you for your license and you don't immediately hand it back. No, there is no question. There's no right to call anybody. There's no right to give the officer another document. All of those are just stalls. And more importantly, or slightly more importantly, all of them are failure to comply with the arresting officers, not arresting at this point, but who will be your arresting officer's command. And there's no certain time, but within a reasonable time after she asks you for your license, the arresting officer, the stopping officer, if you have not handed that license over, no matter what ruse you've been taught to use, or ruses, you are in violation of law and you can be charged with failure to follow a lawful order. So none of the ones that you have in your kit will actually suffice in court. None of those. And that includes the one, well, I was scared. I'm scared. I don't know who you are. You might have had a movie set of 2 police cars, all with the lights on top, and 2 police officers that are dressed in costumes. Probably cost you $100,000 to put on a fake scene like that. And of course, since there's no cameras filming anywhere, it obviously is not a television show. So any excuse you give, I was scared, I didn't know, I have right here a treaty between a fictional country that doesn't exist and a fictional corporation that doesn't exist, and my belief is that treaty says I don't know, it doesn't say anything of the sort. And if it did, I'm not saying it doesn't say it if you read it, I'm saying that no treaty you have, if the state that you live in is not a member of that treaty, and actually treaties, you would have to have it be the federal government for it to be effective if it's with another country. If it's not signed and a real treaty with another country, and nothing you have there is not, it is not valid for anything. You could just wipe your tushy with it because it doesn't mean anything. Equally as important is, well, if it does mean something, does it get you out of any obligation at the roadside? No. The roadside, no demonstration of law allows you to not comply with a valid police order. Nothing. There is nothing in that pile of papers you have that entitles you to not follow the officer's order to provide him with your driver's license and probably, depending on your state, with your registration and your insurance. Now, let's put a period there and let's say, why would anyone encourage you to do that? Who? What sane person would want to start a religion based on let's not follow the cops' orders designed to keep the cops safe from crazy people? You ever seen the number of videos where people arrest what look like sane, sober people, and all of a sudden they pull out a gun and kill or try to kill the officer? It's not uncommon. It's not unheard of. So each time, every time, you take an order that the officer is entitled to give you that is devised for his safety and probably yours, I'm not sure. Each time you do that, you put not only both parties at risk, but you're being incredibly selfish and with the officer's safety. The officer does his job by relying on the fact that most people, when stopped, will follow his orders or her orders and do it in a manner that complies with law. Each time the officer comes up with one of these goofballs who says, no, I have a right to not breathe air, or I have a right to not exist, I'm actually invisible, and it says so on this treaty of the Prairie Dog Nation and the 49ers football team, and it says that I don't have to comply with anything that any officers do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what treaty you have. The treaty is not effective out at the road. No treaty that you have in your plastic container there, it doesn't matter how well argued it is, and it's not. It's nonsense. Didn't you notice it's not written by a person with a law degree? Shouldn't that tell you something? It's not published by a legal press, a company that publishes law books. Shouldn't that tell you something? Well, no, and that is why I believe, and this is just my personal view, that almost all, if not all, people trying to escape their societal obligations by citing documents that they've gotten from sovereign citizens, or I know you don't. Part of your game is don't call it sovereign citizen, but people that are trying to jerry-rig society by not complying with orders, lawful orders, are almost always people that have mental problems in which they're eagerly looking to get in a fight and to cause society problems. So their goal is not really, I believe none of them have the goal of, I'm trying to just prove that we're right, because that's why none of them can ever answer that sentence. You're trying to prove what? There's nothing to prove. You're trying to prove that you don't know the meaning of the word operate. You're trying to prove out at the roadside that you don't know what it means to employ something. Well, that brings us up to a third massive fallacy that completely destroys everything that the sovereign citizens tell you can do. The reason that their entire philosophy, everything they do, has no merit whatsoever is because they do not have someone helping them who has graduated law school. That's an odd thing to say. Why? What secret did they learn at law school? Well, I'm going to say there's probably 100 secrets, but here's the thing. What their strategy is as foolish. It's as if you sat in court and watched a brilliant lawyer and wrote down what he said to the judge and then said, okay, I've got it right here in front of me. When I go in, I'm just going to read the same thing to the judge. And that'll make me as brilliant and successful as she is, the lawyer. Well, that's not true, of course. You don't understand that what the lawyer said to the judge at the conclusion of his preparation or her preparation for the case, you're missing out on the dozens of hours that the lawyer spent reviewing the case and deciding what to say. And so there is no one address to the court fits all. The fact that you heard one and wrote it down doesn't make you as good as the lawyer that you're trying to emulate. You have to know how to go through the facts of the case and the different options and strategies, tactics that there are on how to fight the case, and also what this lawyer has done up to that point, which you haven't seen. This lawyer has probably filed motions, done discovery, and so they have in their possession documents that you probably don't unless you know how to do those things. So what this lawyer says to the judge is the conclusion of many, many hours of work custom tailored to the facts and law of the case they're defending. And you writing down what they say does not make you as good a lawyer as they do. So here's the problem, that you haven't gone to law school. Here's the immense problem it causes, and which, if you have any brains at all, you stop the car and get out of the sovereign citizen movement right now. You're not recognizing an entire area of legal study that controls what you're doing. There's an entire branch of law that no sovereign citizen has ever shown, at least when I see videos, they've never shown any familiarity with that area of law at all. They just say, oh, here's how I'm entitled to win. I've got this document. I've got this document. They don't even know the name of it. But there is a huge area of law. By area of law, you've heard of contracts. You know what a contract is. Real property, which is the legal name for the courses about real estate and land. You know what that is. Well, there's another one that you don't know, and it controls everything that sovereign citizens attempt, and it invalidates everything they do because they don't take its holdings and its applicability into account when they try to argue with the officer at the side of the road. In the area of law that you don't know, that makes all of your efforts pointless, we'll be right after this message. Okay, thanks for staying on with us. Buy some of those dinners. Hey, what is the legal topic? And somebody has, in the interim, pointed out there could actually be two, but the topic that I look at that you sovereign citizens are not going through or investing into your analysis of what are your legal rights, and that's perfect for it, is what some places are teaching it under civil procedure, but most places teach it under the title of remedies. Remedies, and it's not just a one-day course. Remedies is something that you learn over 6 months or a year, depending on the school, and it has to do with what are your rights. One, if you lose in court, and you want to go about, well, I still want my project to continue, but I don't want to violate the court's order that I just lost. And the other one is for people who are out at the scene of a crime, like the sovereign citizens. Do you have a right, if you disagree with the law, to ignore the police officer? The answer is always no. Never. But the course of remedies helps you determine what are your legal risks if you do that. If you do that, can you be arrested for failing to follow the police officer's directions? And the answer is always yes. And that's because it is much better to have the police officer make a mistake. In other words, it's much better if the officer's mistaken for you to follow their directions nonetheless than it is for you to have the right to just walk away from the police officer who's trying to do his duty or her duty, and you just say, no, I disagree with that law, I'm just walking away, which is what sovereign citizens do, and why they are still batting zero for hundreds of cases. I don't think they're at 1,000 yet, but hundreds of cases in every different state. They are just always without any chance of winning, and they've never won yet. Nor have I ever seen a case, and I've seen lots of videos of the cases with the different judges, all of whom stink, but I have never seen a case where the sovereign citizen deserved to win. That's for the reasons that we've gone over. If you've been a avid listener of the first 4 episodes of this podcast, then you know what those reasons are. But the answer is that no sovereign citizen who follows, it's not who you are, but it's what philosophies you follow, legal philosophies. If you follow those ones that they tell you, here's what to do, keep saying strange things like, I'm not doing anything. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything. You get nowhere saying that. Nowhere. I believe that I haven't seen it yet, I believe that many DAs will pretty soon be allowed to have that part of the audio-video presentation silenced. And the jury won't be allowed to hear you screaming that more than maybe once or twice. It is legally meaningless, and we would not want some juror, who's not very bright, to think that, well, if you yell over and over, I didn't do anything, that means you actually believe that you're not doing anything wrong, which is a whole different can of worms. So those things that you've been told that this is the way that you will get out of the arrest or the consequences of the arrest, I've never seen them work in court, and that brings us right back to where we were, which is, so what are your remedies when you go to court? Well, no, we're going to start not go to court. We're going to start at the roadside when the officer asks you to do something that you believe you are not obligated to do. And that would be, the first one, obviously. You know what? I have to say this. The first one would probably be pulled over, but we don't see that, do we? So the first one is going to be what we see all day long, and that is, do you have to comply with the police officer's request, order, demand, command? What is it? That you provide your driver's license. Well, there's 2 points to that. One is the answer is always yes. There is no right, no matter what your suspicion is, even that he's he or she is a corporate monster made out of corporate shares, stocks, come from England, and that's proven by the fringe on the flag. No matter how crazy your beliefs are, they have absolutely no power to free you from the obligation to follow a lawful order. So, no, you have to do what they say, and every sentence, it doesn't fool anybody, especially a judge, but every sentence that you utter trying to hide the fact you don't intend to do that, and it doesn't matter if it's the one where you say, can I help you? Is there something wrong? What did I do? None of those are valid reasons not to comply with the police order. So you can be uttering those strange sentences and look like you're kind of retarded, and at the same time be racking up misdemeanor charges. So I don't see DAs and city attorneys following that yet, but it has to start pretty soon. I believe pretty soon they have to start filing those additional charges for your conduct at the roadside. But the important point is that every last thing you've been taught, hey, here's another delay. When they ask you to roll down the window, don't roll down the window. And I don't have any information on that right now as to whether that's a legally enforceable obligation. I'm going to look into that. Maybe by episode 6 I'll have a good answer. But the point is, the provide me your driver's license is something, for one, you agreed to do it when you got a driver's license. Okay, there might be a few of you out there without a driver's license that never have had one here or in another state. But if you do have one, that driver's license is the property of the state you're in. It's not yours. So you have no right to continue to hang on to it and not give it to the officer. And anyone who disputes that deserves no mercy in my book, because that is one of the ways that the safety of the officer is preserved, by the officer making sure of who he's fighting or who he's disputing the matter with. Is he just getting in an argument with a normal roadside person, or could this be a murderer by the roadside? There's a wonderful, educative video about a highway patrol officer of Kansas, and she pulls over on the road, and there's this nice Chinese young lady, about 20, 25 years old, but maybe 20, 22, and she's got a flat tire, and the highway patrol officer keeps trying to help her, And then the highway patrol officer gets a secret message the right way. That's the way you do it. You don't just blurt it out, but gets a secret message that she's a murder suspect. And so every time the young Chinese go, I got to get out of my car. Can I get my coat out of the car? She said, no, not right now. No, I just go to the car. And she tries to walk to the car. Well, that's why you have to have people that know that there is absolutely no way, no right, and no explanation that will justify defying the police order. If the police tell you to give them your license, you got to do it. And you have to do it without delay. Each delay that you've been taught, and let's see, we've discussed the, can I help you, officer? I'm here to help you. Officer, I'm not looking to cause any trouble. That's my favorite one, because yes, you are. That's an absolute lie. Matter of fact, I would say 95% of the things that you're told to say as a sovereign citizen are absolute lies. So let's go into that. They say you're supposed to read out there, officer, I'm not looking to be disrespectful. Of course you are. The only way to be respectful is to comply with the officer's request. If you don't comply with the officer's request, you are being disrespectful and you are violating the law. So there's that one. There's the officer, I need to see your, and they make up a name for a document that, although it may exist, there is no right, and this is under remedies, there's no right that the officer show you any sort of ID before he has you provide, if you have it, your driver's license. That's the first thing that goes on, so the officer can run it and see, are there any warrants for you as a citizen? Are there any warrants showing that you need to give up, that the officer has a right to take you in, that there are warrants for you? Now, I had really wanted to get into the fallacies of the sovereign citizen and how they apply in court, but we're out of time again. So thank you for listening. I'll see you again next week. Friday is when this one will come out. And, well, not this one, the next one. And until then, I'm Judge Knott, part-time, pro tem, and we'll get into all of what that stuff means in court. And I will see you next week.